Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the No BS With Birchy podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Birch, and this is a show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century. We're now exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. Today, I'm talking about questions that have come in from the community. I encourage you guys to put questions on the bottom of these videos. My team will get them from time to time, hand them to me, we'll make podcasts of them, videos of them, etc. So if you've got a question, drop it down below and you might see yourself on a podcast. So today's question is how to increase positive gearing with an offset account. And I want to go through and probably break down the first part is like, what is positive gearing, what is positive cash flow, and what is an offset account. So there's three things I'm going to take a deep dive into today is positive gearing, positive cash flow, and an offset account, how they all roll together and how you can benefit from these things. So I guess the first thing is what is positive gearing and what is positive cash flow? Because a lot of people get them confused, and it is easy to get them confused, and we'll just isolate them and look at them separately. So I like positive cash flow because positive cash flow is based on the actual cash flow. So let's go down and look at these, right? Let's say, for instance, we've got a property for $200,000 as a purchase price. And let's assume you've got a loan for the whole $200,000 and it's 6% interest. 6% interest on $200,000 would be $12,000 a year worth of interest that you're paying. And if you look at council rates, water rates, strata, insurance, whatever, let's say that's $5,000 in a year, $12,000 in interest, $5,000, that's $17,000 a year. $17,000 a year, I'm calculating these on top of my head, you'd probably be looking at about $350 a week worth of expenditure there. So if you've got a property which is renting out, you buy it for $200, rents for $400 a week, you're getting $400 a week, $20,800 per year. So you've got like $3,000 a year positive cash flow, $3,800. So maybe like $80 a week positive cash flow that you've got there. So that is positive cash flow, right? That is net cash flow in your pocket, right? So let's assume we've got that property, $200,000, 6% interest rate, $12,000 a year of expenditure. Let's assume that we've got a expense of $5,000 a year, so $17,000 a year worth of outgoing, and your property's only renting for $300 a week, so you're getting like $15,600 per year. That property would technically, on paper, be negative cash flow. Negative cash flow, say $1,400 a week. $1,400 a year, which is nothing really. $30 a week, who gives a shit, right? It's nothing in the big scheme of things, right? You push that rent up $50, it becomes positive. So it's neither here or there, right? But let's say it is negative $1,500 a year, $1,400 a year, whatever. You come back and do your tax return, and because the property is only 5 years old, you've got depreciation there. So you've got some deductions that you've got there and different things that you can add back, and the property would be positive geared after those additions and add backs. So that's the difference between positive cash flow and positive geared. And I'm going to throw in another one here. If you're negative geared, negative gearing's stupid, right? You're buying a property that you're losing money of $200 a week. At the end of the year, it's $10,000 a year you've lost. If you didn't have that property, you'd be $10,000 a year richer. People offset that negative cash flow and claim a tax deduction of 30%, 40%, whatever. So it might save $3,000-4,000 a year. So you're still losing money, right? If you didn't have a job, you wouldn't be saving tax. People don't set up a business to lose money. So negative gearing just sucks. I don't like it. I wouldn't do it. So if it's positive cash flow, positive geared, that's how we look at it. Now, I guess, looking at your current properties, you need to be truthful and honest to yourself. Is your property's positive cash flow from day one or positive geared, or is it negative geared? So I think it's important, before I buy any property, I always run it through a little cash flow calculator that I've got, like a little spreadsheet. And I want to build like an online version. So, my tech guys that are watching, right, I've had it for 10 years. I've got some software out there that I own that's out there in the universe around property software. But I'd love to add it in there one day so you can just go in there, a little quick calculator, spits out, how the numbers stack up for you. A lot of people will say my property is positive cash flow, and they'll look at their cash flow based on my interest rate's $12,000 a year, and my income's 15 grand a year, I'm positive 3 grand, but they're not calculating in all the other expenses for owning that property. So you need to be truthful with your cash flow and sort of weigh that all up. So I guess to increase that cash flow, if it is negative, there's certain things that you can sort of add in to the portfolio. Some of the things might be you can just push the rent up, which is fantastic. You might do a little renovation on the property. If I'm doing a reno on my property, I want to see that I'm getting a cash on cash return and the capital appreciation. So if I'm doing a reno for 10 grand, I want to see like 5 grand a year in extra rent. So if I spend 10 grand, I get 5 grand a year or $100 a week, happy days. You can't get a better return than 50% out there on certain things, right? So if you've got the asset, how can you lift its value? So looking at different ways. One of them can be that you can structure your loan in a different way. You can get yourself a cheaper interest rate. You can put your money in an offset account. And I think that's sort of where the question's coming from today is, how can you create positive cash flow and get your property either positive cash flow or positive yield by having money in an offset? And simply, what an offset account is let's say you've got a $200,000 loan and you've got 50 grand in your savings account. If that account offsets it, well then suddenly you're only paying interest on 150,000, not on the 200, because the 50 grand that's in the offset account, it might be your everyday savings account, offsets an account, so whatever the balance of that is, you're not paying interest on that. So if you've got 50 grand, 200 grand loan, put 50 grand in the offset, you're only paying tax on 150 at 6%. Now you're really trying to test me, but it's about $9,000 a year in interest. You're now saving $3,000 a year, and your property is becoming more positive cash flow or positive geared based on that one exercise. But I think it's fantastic in a growth phase of your portfolio, but to pay off a mortgage, I don't look at it as a smart move, right? Because reality of it is that you've got 50 grand you put in your offset, you're saving yourself 6% interest, so you're saving yourself 3 grand a year, great. But reality of it is that your $50,000 that you put in that money to save yourself a few grand is losing its purchasing power. You could go buy other stuff with it, go buy yourself a new car, go pay off your credit card, go buy yourself a new house, go buy yourself a renovation, whatever. Because if you look what you could buy for 50 grand last year to what you can buy for 50 grand this year, it's getting less and less and less and less. So you've got to factor in many different elements to this. So looking at it, if you're saving up for another deposit, great, have an offset account, keep there as if you've got a buffer. And I always say to people, there's no hard and fast rule of how much money you should have as a buffer, but everyone should have sort of, for me, I'll look at every property I have. If I've got 5 grand, that's cool. If you've got 10 properties, you've got 50 grand. If something goes wrong with some properties, you've got a little slush fund to dip into. And naturally, if I've got hundreds of properties, I'm not going to have millions of dollars sitting there because I think it's a waste, right? So I like having my cash flow working harder for me. So if you're holding a buffer, or if you're holding money for saving for a next deposit, it's good to put in the offset. But once you've got enough capital to pull out, I'd rather go buy another asset that's going to increase in value and increase my bottom line of a cash flow position. So paying down debt for me isn't the most exciting thing out there. Generating more cash flow is. So looking at it, the offset account can save you money in the short term. What is your goal? What is the bigger picture? Do you have that facility in your loan? And a lot of people just get a loan and they don't look at it, and they've got all this money sitting there, and it could be helping them save. So it's a good thing. And I think if you've got a loan and you've got money that's in another bank account, you can sort of offset it. Speak to your broker, speak to your bank, see what options there are to get yourself an offset account set up so you can save some money. It's good for saving money in the short term, but it is not an investment strategy, right? Reality is, if you got a 200 grand property, let's say you've got one property, it's 200 grand, and you've got 40 grand, 50 grand that you can throw in towards the loan, you'll save yourself 3 grand a year. 10 years later, you've got 30 grand saved up. Cool, right? That is cool. There's no problem with that, right? I did that with like a smart ass look at my face for those of you that are watching the video. But if you took that 50K and you go buy another property for 200 grand, right? You could buy a second property, right? So now you've got 400 grand worth of property, and you've got 350K worth of debt because you put maybe say 360 grand worth of debt because you put the other 50 towards the new purchase. Now, if the market was to double or go up in any capacity, you've got 400 grand going up by, say, 10%. There's 40 grand of growth, right? You've now exposed to a larger market. If you've got 2 properties and you can push the rents on those 2 properties by $50 a week each, which, very, very easy to push the rents up on them. You've got 2 properties, $50 a week, it's $100 a week in extra cash flow. Now, assuming the second property that you buy is neutral cash flow today and you push it up by $50, now you've just created, $5 grand a year, $100 a week, 52 weeks in the year, there's $5 grand a year in extra cash flow. So $5 grand a year times 10, there's 50 grand in 10 years, right? And you've got an asset that's doubled in value, tripled in value. So for me, money is just a transient thing, right? It's just a transactional thing. That's all currency / I don't know using the word money for currency because dollars, they just keep printing them, but I won't get too technical today. Looking at the money, I don't like holding it. It's just is in, is out, is in, is out. It's cash flow. You just want to keep expanding your asset base, so then you've got larger sums of money coming into your orbit and more assets in your orbit for you to be able to make more moves and choices and options in your future. So an offset account can work well. It can help you reduce the outgoing and the burden of your current property or your current situation, but I don't think it's a big end game strategy, because reality of it is, if you're saving interest at 6% today, interest rates come down to 4% or whatever, inflation's still remaining at 7%, 6%, and they say different figures out there, right? They'll say inflation's come down, whatever, but you go shopping, you go to the food shop, you go to get a car, you go to do whatever you want in your life, and you know that it's a lie and everything's gone up greater than that. So paying down debt is not the best outcome out there. Increasing your cash flow is important. So that's just my 2 cents on that. I guess the some pros and cons of it. Temporary it's good, long term not so good. If your property goes from negative cash flow, if you had a negative cash flow property, and it turns to positive cash flow, well then you'll be paying some more taxes there, right? So I guess the big thing is you want to accumulate your asset base, increase your cash flow, and then along the way you also want to find different things that you can do to minimize your tax, because paying tax sucks. I get it. I really fucking get it, because I have to pay lots of tax and I hate it, right? But the reality is how can you legally, ethically grow your asset base, grow your cash flow, and also minimize the tax along the way. And that's the art of juggling a cool portfolio. But you're not going to, take from this pocket, save in that pocket. I think you just need to, look bigger on that front. So as for an offset account, is there a minimum for it? No, you can have an account with $2 in it. That $2 offsets. You can have 50 grand in it. You can have $1 million in it. The banks offer these products as an offset account. To most loan products have it. If you've got a second tier lender or a third tier lender or a non-traditional bank, they may not offer it. The big 4 banks would generally offer an offset option to your loan. So speak to your bank or your lender, whoever your institution is, and ask, is there a facility for that? Speak to your broker to see if there's a way of restructuring your loan to add an offset account there, because most people will have 50 grand laying around or 100 grand. Not that it's just cash, like, hey, but like along the way, you might have 5 properties deep and you've got a little buffer there of 50K. You don't want to be spending that on a deposit and buying the next property, just sitting there. It might just be transitory there for 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. Why not make it work for you to help you reduce your interest? So I guess the big thing to be realizing out there is no one's really saved themselves to be a millionaire or saved themselves to be a billionaire, right? The real wealth in the world has been from assets increasing in value, cash flows increasing in value, and most people, I think, look at, okay, how can I? And I think the worst part is, how can I save $1, right? I don't look at how I can save $1. Yeah, it's important, but I want to know, how can I grow my asset position? How can I grow my net worth position? So all the wealthiest people out there in the world, they're not looking at, okay, how can I get an extra 5 grand this year, or how can I get extra 2 grand? They're like, okay, what can we do for our top line revenue? What can we do for our bottom line revenue? What can we do to improve our net worth position? What can we do to improve our assets? And if it was for me personally, and I had 50K sitting there, yeah, I can save 6% interest, but at the same time, if I've got 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 properties in my portfolio, I'd rather use that 50 grand to improve that portfolio to squeeze out an extra 20 grand a year in revenue. That's what's important. So yeah, looking at it, no one saves themselves to be a billionaire. Debt is a wonderful, wonderful tool. If used correctly, it can be the killer of people, or it could be the maker of billionaires. So it's important to look at that. There is no minimum. All banks are different. All lenders are different. Speak to your broker, your bank about it. If you need help on that front, you can reach out to us. The team at Zinger Finance have got 15 staff, 16 staff. We're continuously growing, so my team are there to be able to help you, look at what options there are. You can hit us up 1300 367 925. Email us at admin@binvested.com.au. And if you found this to be of an interest and important and eye-opening for you, smash up the like and write us a comment below. We'll catch up soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great week. Bye for now.
Like Bilal said, man, we're stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar back to die, soon to be hyperinflated.